Okay, we're live. This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined by some very special guests. Cassandra Woodard. Hello, good morning, Cassandra. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good. And we have special guest, Mr. Robert Menchaca. How are you, Robert?
I'm good, Mr. Davis. Nice to see you today. It's a blessing to see you guys. Thank you for inviting us to your podcast.
And ma'am, can you tell us your name?
Karen Galong.
Say it slowly one more time.
Karen Galong.
Okay, Karen, how are you?
I'm good, Mr. Davis. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good. So you guys are on the show today, and you must have some type of connection with CPS.
Yes. Um, Unfortunately, yes, Mr. Davis.
So do you mind sharing your story?
Absolutely not, Mr. Davis. We have been traumatized throughout this whole for about 4 years since the inception of the case, which started in 2017 with our 4 children, ages 11, now 11, our oldest daughter, Cherie. Anyways, Cherie, Jeremy.
Well, no, we're not going to mention any names, okay?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, 4 children under the ages of 11 and from 11, 10, 8 years old, and 3 years old.
And what happened?
Just like I was telling Karen, I've had a trillion things I want to say, but just from the gate, right from the gate, I feel that this is a vindictive agenda towards us as parents due to me being, obviously there's an age difference. Karen, I didn't meet Karen until I was 44 years old. Karen was 23 at the time. And I feel it was a blessing because I had been looking for a nice woman to have children with. I never had children. And when I met her, I felt that this is God's way of utilizing her. And likewise, she was looking for a good man, and we met on a fate encounter and chance encounter. But out of nowhere, just from reprimanding my son when my son was being a little aggressive at school, and he kept getting reports because I like watching UFC fights and boxing, and my son, I got him into a little sports thing of boxing and having fun with other children, just play boxing. That's what my father got me into, and it was like discipline, almost like when parents get their kids in the karate. And he was taking it to another level, and he was getting reprimanded at school. And I kept asking him, look, please don't do that. And just one day he just said that my mom's lying, the teacher's lying, and I'm not doing that. And sure enough, I caught him hitting his older sister. And that day I hurt his feelings. I reprimanded him, and I hit him with his pants on. I gave him a little spanking, and it didn't hurt. I just hurt his feelings, and he didn't even cry. However, it was one of those situations where we already had social workers in our lives because our oldest daughter, is special needs, and so he told one of the social workers the following day. So it just avalanched after that, just down. It was all uphill after that, and I feel that this is a vindictive agenda. There's so many things I could keep going on and on. This is a very prejudicial system. One of the worst things I could say would happen after two months after the kids were removed from our custody, I aired my grudge after sitting there for an hour and a half listening to all the reasons why CPS was in our lives. 15 women, 1 man at the roundtable meeting. And when I aired my grudge, I pointed to the supervisor and the social worker, and I says, how's it possible? I've called you guys 20 times. You've put the children and my wife into a domestic violence shelter, and with not even any courtesy call whatsoever, nothing at all. 9 days, they disappeared from the face of the earth. When the police came in, they questioned Karen when I was at work about the situation with my son. The social worker told another social worker, and then they came and they interviewed Karen, and they manipulated her, saying, if you don't reveal everything about him, which they already had an agenda towards me, because when I would come in, and the social workers did not like. A lot of times, I'm a little A personality. I'm old school, and sometimes I wouldn't agree with how they were in my house, being disrespectful, talking on the phone, laughing, and telling Karen, is no mean no when it comes to intimate situation. And Karen told me, and there's times I see that lady, and I say, please don't ask personal questions, just direct your attention towards my daughter. And I feel that the social workers, they are not receptive to anybody telling them, especially, and I'm not a male chauvinist. I was brought up with women, my mom and my sisters. And I feel that this was a feminism movement, being that there be times they'd see me being a little, not controlling, they call it power and control, abuse of power and control with Karen and the children. And sure enough, it just turned out to where I would dispute and contradict them. And then they went to CPS. They removed Karen and the children. One day it was a nightmare. I just said, what? The police are over there taking my children and Karen? My neighbor says, yeah, here's like 7 police cop cars here, and they're taking the kids. And I'm calling Karen, no response. And I was in like an hour away, and I just beelined it straight home, dropped everything. I was finishing the job. I do construction and plastering. And sure enough, on the way here, I got a call from a detective saying, we have Karen, we have the children, you need to come, we need to interview you at a police station. And I went there, and I was interviewed for like 3 hours. And then they would not tell me where she was. They just said they're safe. The following day, I was begging, I was calling the social workers, and then to no avail. I mean, it just is just reason after this the CFT meeting 2 months after this situation when they were taken out of my custody. Someone told me that's very familiar with DCFS, this out here in San Fernando Valley. This is a very prejudicial system, and I feel that this was a feminism movement it's a woman-run industry, and it's a vindictive agenda. Despite evidence to prove on the contrary, we complied with all the court case plan to no avail. I was hoping to get a good lawyer. I was expecting the lawyers at the Monterey Park court, because they kept telling me, reassuring me, don't worry, we're giving you all the opportunities to reunite with your children. The visits, there's such an uphill battle. And someone told me, because of what you said at that CFT meeting, you are never going to get your kids, because it's once they sense that you are defiant of this, and I'm a passionate father, I could not understand how this can get out of control. They had evidence according to on their behalf saying that, Karen revealed a lot, and it was all through coercion, telling her, if you don't tell us everything about him, you will never see your kids. We're going to remove them permanently from you. So of course she would tell them, yeah, he comes home and he gets on me and he directs me, and he's disciplinarian, but he doesn't hit the children other than that day. And they just manipulated all the stories from the preliminary reports to the emergency order that the social workers came after they removed the kids. They took statements saying he's mentally disturbed, because I'm passionate like this. But I've learned that that was my demise, being very a passionate father in this movement. I feel this is a woman-run industry, and you're not to tell the social workers anything. If I could take things back, I would just comply and conform to all of their instructions, and basically just say, what hoop do you want me to jump through? Will do. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Very rarely would you have a man. Only time we had a man social worker was when we had our 2-year-old, our newborn born, and there was a disposition report, and he came to observe our apartment, and he confirmed that we were living great. And I mean, our house was clean. We showed up. We showed him all the supplies we bought, and he just said he manipulated us into acting as if he was for us. And then when we got the report, it was a shock to see how he turned that report that we assumed that was going to be a report showing that we have complied with everything, and it backfired because he says, "Oh, I know that social worker. Oh, I know the supervisor. Oh, I totally understand what you're saying. They are very dominant, very like tyrants." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So he manipulated me into revealing everything. Sure enough, he must have went back to the office and told him what I had said, or they must have heard the recording. Obviously, he did something where when we seen the disposition report, it's as if I was an animal. We have not changed. He made so many lies. And I told my lawyer, how can this be? And he says, like I said, this is a prejudicial system. And whatever you did at that preliminary DCFS CFT meeting, it's like a dog with a bone. They will not let go. These women are in these social workers. They are brought up oppressed, and they get into an occupation saying, I'm going to get into this to stop the men from thinking they're the dictators. And I think it's part of the Me movement. It was during that time where I was seeing all these. Anyways, Karen can agree with everything I'm saying right now.
Definitely. It's just, I didn't know what to do because they were like Robert said, coercing, and then at the same time I was just multitasking with the children going through somewhat of a family issue at the same time. So it's like, well, who do I listen to?
Well, I'm a little bit confused. Why did they first come to your home? I mean, was there any alleged abuse?
The reason why because my son, the social worker, like I said, my daughter has special needs. They were regional center. They call them mandated reporters, and there was this resistance towards me because I would tell them, please don't do this in my house. Be more respectful. Karen would tell me a lot of times they were just they had their turn it more a little bit. No, the other way. No, the other way.
I can see you.
Because this thing, I don't. I move this because this kind of these are our. I'm gonna.
Hey, Robert. Hey, Robert.
Yeah, because ever since this case, our life has been turned around, so we're kind of recovering. If you would know the full story of exactly what has happened to us, it's like they were trying to crush us. So, anyways, getting back to your question. Yeah, my son told the social worker, yeah, my daddy's spanking, and I never spanked my son. I never had to. I just talked to him, my daughters, and he told one of the social workers, and she ran with it, saying, we're going to get him.
But at the same time, the reason why we had mandated reporters here at the house, because like Robert said, our oldest is special needs right off the bat, and we had therapists here when she was like below 5. And in that time, we had Jeremy. So knowing that my oldest had a bigger than average head, plus she had like this it's called hemangioma, like right on her forehead right here. So we had like keep going back to CHLA, and then during that time, we obviously, as Robert's the only one breadwinner here, and I'm the one who's basically staying home with the kids. It's trying to schedule missing work and taking the kids to the hospital with his truck or with the vehicle that we had at the time.
There's a lot of factors, Mr. Davis. I mean, there's a list of reasons why they came into our lives.
Let me ask you this. They said that you abused the child by spanking the child. From that alleged date to the date they took away your children, how much time had expired?
That was probably, it took about a good year and a half through going through the court, doing the court case plan, to where they finally decided, COVID-19.
Hold on, Robert. I need you to listen to this question very carefully, okay?
Yes, sir.
There was an incident of an alleged spanking.
Yes.
Okay. We'll call that day one.
Okay.
What day did they come and take all the children from you? If that happened on day one.
The following day. The next day, Mr. Davis.
Okay. When they came, did they show you a warrant to detain all of your children?
No.
They came in when I was at work and they knocked on the door and she opened it, and that's
Okay, so let's go to that day. So, ma'am, tell me what happened on that day.
They were basically, I was feeding the kids dinner like around 5:30, 6 o'clock. And they were knocking. They're like 3 men and one woman, obviously, because Robert wasn't here. They looked at the house. They looked at the kids. They were basically, in diapers because they're home. I wasn't expecting any visitors. So they're saying, well, how come the kids are not dressed because they're home and that's what they want to dress in? And they're like, well, we had to take you. Like, where? And they didn't show me any paperwork. They just said, we just gotta like go. And it's like, instead of being hostile with them in front of the kids, traumatizing the kids a bit more, said, you know what? I'll go.
Okay, so you just told me in less than 45 seconds, maybe a minute, everything that happened that day.
no.
And I'm
There's
going
a
to
lot
submit.
more. But
Hold on a second. Hold
okay.
on. I'm going to submit to you, with all due respect, all of this happened and it took a lot more than 45 seconds. So, can you tell me, like, step by step what happened? I mean, you're feeding the kids dinner. Okay, I got that. It's about 5:30. You hear a knock on the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
So pick it up from there.
I normally ignore the knock on the door because I don't people like selling stuff randomly here. And when I check my balcony, because we live in the first floor, we have a balcony. We see who's coming in and out, whatever. And I think there's like, at least from my point of view at that time, was like 3 cop cars, and their lights were like on. And it's like, okay, this is a bad neighborhood for one. So I didn't know it was for me, or if it was to ask me some questions, whatever I know, whatever the case may be. They like, Karen? I said, yes. Karen from number 1, because at that time there was 2 Karens here. And it's like, yes, I'm Karen Galong. How can I help you? And it's like, can we come in and talk privately? I said, I don't think anything of it at the time. And I said, okay, let's go. And they're like, well, we had this report that you're being abused. It's like, where would you get that from? And well, we have further questions. We would like to invite you to, our office. I think that was at Topanga or whichever one it was. It was really, really close by. And we just stayed there for like, I would say, 30 minutes at the office, little playroom for the kids. And we were driven to, I think, was Glendale Bay? Or was it Gardena?
You're kind of jumping to this. When they took you in the police car, they took you to the police station first, didn't they? And then they took you to the DCFS office, and then they put you into a shelter.
Yes. I'm just not really good with memory. I'm sorry.
Okay. Did they take the children away from you when they took you to the police station?
No.
So when they took you to the shelter, were the kids with you?
Yes.
Okay. So when did they take the kids away from you?
About a month, maybe a month and a half at the latest.
Okay, I could give you.
Hold on. Where were you living when they took the kids away from you?
Where we're at now.
No, from the shelter, right?
Well,
We were
I don't
living
know.
here when they took the children.
Hey, Robert, I'm trying to speak to her, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, Karen.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
They took you to the police station. You had the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Then they took you to a shelter. You still had the kids.
Yes.
How long were you at the shelter with the kids?
I would say about a month and a half.
You stayed there a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What caused you to leave the shelter?
I was kicked out because they thought that me and Robert were like talking to or having communication.
Okay, now stop for a second. At this point, had you ever been to court, to the juvenile court?
No.
You had never been to the juvenile court.
No.
Okay, Robert, yes or no? Up to this point, had you ever been to the juvenile court?
No.
Okay. So you haven't told me anything about them alleging domestic violence between Robert and yourself, Karen. Did any social worker ever say there was domestic violence between the two of you up to this point?
No.
Okay. So what I don't understand is, why were you in the shelter?
Because they said that they had an anonymous call, and they wanted to see if my son had a bruise on his butt, which there was no bruise. To the point that one day, out of nowhere, my social worker at the time drove me to see my son, and there was not one bruise.
Okay, hold on a second. You told me up to this point you had the children.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say the social worker drove you to see your son, I don't understand that.
I need to talk to him about it. Direct it to him.
Hold on a second.
I'm going.
Hey, Robert.
Mr. Davis, with all due respect,
Robert, hold on a second, because I'm trying to talk to Karen. This is important.
Okay, well, there's a lot. That's why I'm trying to explain to you. This is a very complicated thing for her to reflect on. I'm the one that's internalized everything. I'm the one that's
Robert.
But I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you explain it to her.
You're not helping me.
Okay.
Okay, Karen.
Yes,
do you?
Sir.
Okay, so when you went to the shelter, did you have all of your children?
Yes.
Okay. So when you said the social worker drove you to see your son, was your son not living with you at the shelter?
This was before the shelter incident. I'm sorry, I did not mention that. Because we had a visit with me and my oldest at the time was at home. Wait, was she at home? No, we had a visit from the worker that day, an unannounced visit, and the kids were there. So like, I should leave because I need to pick up my kids. I said, well, since the reason why you're being late, I'll drove you to the school. And I guess when I was taking the kids or picking the kids from the classroom, the worker stayed in the office and wanted to see if there was like any incidents with my son or anything like that. So that's how it is. And then that's what I call day one. And then from that on, that's when the police that same night, actually, the police came, and that's when that whole thing happened, that same night.
Okay. So I want to jump back to you being in the shelter, okay?
Okay.
All right. When you were at the shelter, did they take the children away from you while you were at the shelter?
No.
Or after?
Yes, they did.
After.
Okay. So while you were at the shelter, you took all the children, and at some point you left and went back home, correct?
Went back to my mom and dad's for a little bit, yes.
Okay. While you were at your mom and dad's with the children, did you have all the children with you?
Yes.
Okay. And did CPS or DCFS take the children away from you while you were at your mom and dad's?
No.
Okay. While you're at your mom and dad's, did you ever go to court?
No.
Okay. So at some point you're at your mom and dad's and you decide to leave and go back home?
No, that at that point the social worker at that time says where they would want the kids to be replaced, which is what at the time at my brother's house, which is down from where I'm living at right now. Since my mom and dad's place is not sufficient enough to have 3 kids, me and my mom and dad in one small room, they said who can take the kids while we were trying to like work this little case out during our classes or whatever the case may be. They said, well, we'd rather have it with family. So it automatically figured last minute with my brother.
Okay, but why would they take the kids away from you?
Because they had hearsay of me and Robert getting back together, having contact.
Okay, so let me stop you right there. Okay. At this point, why would you and Robert not be allowed to have contact if no one said there was domestic violence between the two of you?
Because they wanted me to have restraining order firsthand, and which lasted like a couple weeks, and they wanted me to extend it, but there's no valid reason to extend it more than what the temporary restraining order was. I think was like 14 days, a week, something like
Well,
that.
but why did you get a restraining order to begin with?
They wanted me to do it. They convinced me to do it the whole time. Every social worker, every even my ILS worker at that time. I have an ILS worker
Okay,
that
hold
I
on.
was in denial
Okay.
of DV.
Oh, all right. So they all convinced you that there was domestic violence between you and Robert?
Yes.
Okay. Now, was there domestic violence between you and
No.
Robert?
Not even. There was like it would be heated conversation, but never like domestic violence or physical violence between me and Robert. Never.
Okay. About how many people or social workers were convincing you to try to get a restraining order against Robert?
Every single one of them. Every single therapist that my daughter has encountered or seen me and Robert having like little spats at times.
How many of that was there? I mean, was it one person, two people, 10
I would
people?
say, I would say 4, maybe 5.
Okay. Were they working together or are they just doing this separately, independently of one
There
another?
was some would do it as a couple, like back to back, just to save time, and there would be one would like come every twice a week
All right.
for my daughter.
Up to this point in time, okay, you're at your mother's house with the kids. Have the police ever been called out to your home for alleged domestic violence between you and Robert?
No,
Okay. Do you live in an apartment building or in a house?
apartment.
So you have a lot of neighbors?
Yes, we have this building has 14 units.
Okay. And that's where you were living with Robert before you were living at your parents' house with the kids, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you this again just to make sure. Up to this point, when you're at your parents' house, has anybody ever called and reported to police that there was domestic violence between you and Robert?
No,
Okay. Was there any domestic violence between you and Robert up to this point in time?
no.
Okay. When you said you said an ILS worker. Is that what you said?
Yes,
Okay. Please tell us in the audience what ILS worker, what that stands for.
it's independent living skills worker.
Okay. So why did you have an ILS worker and when was that person assigned to you?
That person was assigned to me, I would say a couple, maybe, if I'm not mistaken, a month before everything happened.
When you say everything happened, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Before the DV allegations and all that stuff.
Okay. And why was the person assigned to you?
Because I also have a mild intellectual disability myself. I have they say long-term and short-term memory loss, and I also have a hard time understanding paperwork due to my disability. I've always had this disability ever since elementary.
Okay. Was this something that developed biologically or was it a traumatic injury or do you know?
I don't know. I just ever since I was in elementary, I've always been in special ed classes, and at
Okay.
the same time, my legs are always been special needs. That's why I always had like special PE.
Okay. Got it. Now, when you went and got the temporary restraining order against Robert, did you fill out that paperwork or did somebody do it for you?
Somebody did it for me because I couldn't understand what I was. They just said how Robert was, because I
Well,
said, "Can you do it for me?" Thinking that they would do what as I completely was saying, but they twisted my words like everything else, and
now
I
here,
didn't really understand what I was reading because I didn't have my Alice worker at the time. It was just me and
hold on a second. You said you didn't understand what you were reading in that paperwork because you didn't have what?
My ILS worker.
Okay, so does your at this point in time, does your ILS worker read things and explain them to you?
Not fully.
No. Is that what she's supposed to do?
Yes.
Okay. Now, please understand something. I'm trying to be respectful, so I'm not trying to embarrass you or anything like that. But I have to ask you this question. When that paperwork was filled out for you, were you able to read it and understand it?
Not
On your
fully.
Okay. And is that due to your disability?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever been diagnosed with a learning or reading disability?
Yes, that's one of the reasons why I have an IELTS worker. That's one of the reasons why ever since elementary to high school I've had special needs classes.
Okay. Did you go to a mainstream high school and just take special needs classes? Or were
Yes.
you okay? You know, Melanie has just made a comment. Let's see it on the screen. Invoke the ADA, get an advocate. Do you know what the ADA is?
No.
Okay. It's a federal law, and it's also a state law in California. It's to protect people with disabilities. Has anybody ever tried to explain that to you or tell you about that? Is that yes or no?
No.
Are you
Get it out of bed. Come on.
you okay?
You okay? Direct it towards me. Direct it towards me.
You know, I'm going to stop right now because I don't, want to add to any discomfort or upset. And, maybe later
It's not
on.
even Mr. Davidson. I just miss my kids.
Okay.
Okay, that's why a lot of times I'm.
Robert, hold on,
Okay.
Robert. Thank you. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pause in this interview. And we do this show every day. Okay. We just do it on, at 9 a.m. on the weekends, but we do the show every day at 7 p.m. I'm going to be in contact with you, and we're going to pick up this interview if you guys want to do that in the future. But I want to
You can
tell
tell
you
me,
that.
Mr. Davidson. I'm okay. I just need a second.
Okay.
I'm just I'll just step away for a minute or two to gather myself. Can you just talk to Robert? I'm the reason why I'm crying is not because of your question. It's just I just miss my kids.
Right. That I understand. However, okay, I think it would be not responsible of me to pause the show and let you come back. I need you to, to completely gather yourself, and I think we can pick this up even tomorrow or the next day. Okay, I do this show right every day. It's not like we're going to miss anything. All right.
No,
But
I'm good, Mr. Davidson. I'm good.
the first thing I want to tell you is that I appreciate you coming on and sharing this story and you answering hard questions, and obviously you guys have been through a lot, both you and Robert. I'm just trying to dissect, little by little, exactly what and why things happen. Because I don't think, and I may be wrong, I don't think that when you turned in that restraining order, that from what you're telling me now, you didn't know what you were signing. And you couldn't have known what you were signing because you had a learning disability and a reading disability. Yet, somebody prepared that for you, knowing that about you, asked you to sign it. And once you signed it, that followed you up until this time. And I bet the judge didn't even know about your learning disability and the fact that you didn't understand what you were signing. And it's not surprising to me because a lot of people over the years have told me I didn't know what I was signing when I asked for that restraining order. I didn't even read it. So, and these are people that don't have a learning disability. And what happens is somebody prepares paperwork for them, tells them just sign right here, and they sign right here, and they turn it into the judge. In some instances, you can get a restraining order without even seeing the judge, an emergency restraining order. And the judge, reads it. he or she says, okay, for purposes of this temporary restraining order, I have to sign and issue it, and we'll have a full hearing later on. Unfortunately, they gave it to you. You couldn't read it. It sounds like they told you to sign it. Restraining order issued, and that right there was the cause of you losing your children and has resulted in you never getting your children back.
Yes.
So this is extremely important, right? Because this happens. I hear this story a lot, right? I hear it a lot. But anyway, I'm digressing. I want to thank you for being on the show today. We're going to continue this
No,
tomorrow.
Mr. Davis, I'm good. Let's just continue it right now. It's important for me to for us to just continue, if you don't mind. I may
Okay.
I may cry every now and then, but I'm good. If I learn anything from this case, I just be emotional, but then again, to a point, just roll it off. But
Wait. Hold on a second. I appreciate that. I really do. But I don't want to be irresponsible. All right. And I think as an interviewer, we need to take a break. Okay. And we are going to take a break from your interview. We are going to continue your interview, believe me, if you tell me you want to, but not right now. Okay.
okay.
I want to thank both of you for being on the show today. And I want to thank both of you for sharing with me and with the audience. I will be in contact, or my producer Grace will be in contact with you about picking this up at a later date. Okay?
Okay, Mr. Davis.
Can I
Alrighty,
say one
folks.
thing, Mr. Davis?
I prefer that you don't, Robert,
Okay.
and we'll pick this up at another time. All right?
Okay.
All right, I'll be talking to you guys soon.
Today?
I'll probably contact you later today, or my producer will be contacting you tomorrow. Unfortunately, our producer Grace is not work. She doesn't work on Sundays. She sets the show up for me and everything, and I just push buttons, and here we are on the live stream. But she actually is off today with her family, and she'll probably contact you tomorrow. Okay?
Okay, Mr. Davis.
Have a good rest of the day. Thank you, and thank you again for appearing. Alrighty, Miss Woodard. Any comments?
No, but actually, yeah, well, yeah. That was really heartbreaking to know like that they're using her disability against her, basically.
Right. You know what? And I've seen this before. I mean, this is not a new story. You know, Robert, as he said, is 20 years older than her, right? And people from the outside looking in, especially given the fact that she has a disability, are jumping to some conclusions, and assumptions about their relationship.
Yeah.
And one of the assumptions is, as they're telling, because we've talked to them, is that there was domestic violence. And it doesn't sound like there ever was domestic violence. And then the unfortunate thing is he says that he spanks the kid, which you're allowed to do in California. I don't know to the extent of the spanking. We haven't gotten to that part of the story. Did he beat the shit out of the kid and there were broken bones and bruises and blood? Or was it just, a spanking where it was barely any red? I don't know. We haven't got to that part of the story yet.
Yeah. Well, he said that he did it like a tap on the butt with the pants on. So,
Right.
Even though like I feel like they're trying to say that the domestic violence was with the child and they were taking them all out of the home because of the risk, but that's still not right. That wasn't,
Right.
especially if they said that there was no bruising or anything.
And you know what the odd thing is that she said that she was in the shelter, was it a month and a half?
Yeah.
And assuming the husband or the father didn't see the children for that amount of time, I don't think as I remember the law, I don't think they can keep the kids away from the father for more than a few days without filing a case against him.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just say you can't see your kids. And then if if you don't agree with that, they have to file the case. They just can't go on and say, "Well, we'll decide later on how and if you can see your kids." That's
Yeah.
not the law. I mean, if the father Robert wanted to see his kids after 2 or 3 or 4 days, and they still said no, they have to file a case. And
Hmm.
them not filing a case is could be tantamount to a violation of his rights. I did a case a few years ago for a woman, and I think I talked about this recently. um, she had 2 children. She lived at home with her mother,
Hmm.
so there were 2 adults in the home, and then she had another baby, and the baby died in sleep, right?
Oh.
And of course, police got involved, social workers got involved. The social workers took the other 2 kids, and they just assumed, or they actually called it in writing, child abuse. And the very next day, doctors at a very prominent hospital in West LA, I won't say the name, but you'll guess the name, called police and faxed police that the baby died of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome,
Hmm.
which is not child abuse.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So they immediately stopped the criminal prosecution of my client. And what they also should have done is return the other 2 kids. It's not child abuse.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't. They didn't return the kids. They put the kids in foster care. The
Oh,
kids ended
wow.
up with a relative foster care. She was having monitored visits, and they started making her do all of these things like parenting and counseling and drug counseling, all kind of stuff. But they never filed a case. The interesting thing was I saw the paperwork because they were going to file the case until they found out it was SIDS, and they never filed the case. And but they wouldn't give the lady her kids back. Initially, they convinced her to sign a paperwork that said her kids could be placed out of her custody, if you can believe that. And then she realized, she didn't want that. And it was either on the form, on the bottom of the form, or on the back of the form, some type of disclosure or warning that said, if you don't agree with any of this, us keeping your kids, more than 3 or 4 days, just tell us. We'll give you your kids back, or we'll file a case to keep the kids away from you.
Mm.
That's what they should have done with this family, but they didn't do it. And in her case, they never did it because obviously, if they filed the case, the lady and the police, and presumably the social workers, have a letter from the doctors at this very famous hospital saying child's death is sudden infant death syndrome. And there were no other injuries to the kid. The kid just passed away, unfortunately. Well, she eventually got her kids back because she hired a lawyer. And the initial lawyer that she had, who's was an extremely well-known attorney, he called me up and asked me to do the case because he's in the middle of trial and he was about to start another trial. So I did the case, and it turned out to be very successful for the family because their civil rights were violated. They were violated.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what they should have done with this family. They should have filed something, not just keep the kids away from them,
Yeah.
or
That
away from the father.
that
And
kind of reminds me of like the have you heard of hidden foster care?
no, what is that?
I was reading something about this on I have a website that I go on for child welfare. It's in print news, I guess it's called. And they had an article about hidden foster care where they tell a family, they go and try to confiscate the child. And if they are like, if you don't give this child to a relative or somebody like that, we're going to take your kids. So they find a relative and they put them in with the relative without starting a case. And then once they don't start the case, the relative is asking, like, well, what am I supposed to do with the kid now if I'm not supposed to give it to the mom? And then if I give it to the mom, you guys are going to start a case. So they're trying to find help to take care of this child and enroll it in school under their name and everything, but they're not able to. So what they have to do is sign their guardianship over to this person, and that's hidden foster care.
That's interesting. I have heard of that happening. I
Mhm.
didn't know that there was an actual, name for it. Um, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Before, you and I have talked about this before. The website that you just mentioned that watches social, not social,
child
watches
welfare news.
right, CPS around the country or around the world.
Mhm.
What is the name of that? I want to post that name so everyone that's watching today can get
Let
their
me
own,
let me
you
make
know.
sure I got the right
Okay.
website.
All right.
But I know one of them is the Child Welfare Gateway.gov, I believe. Hold on. I'll tell you. Hold on.
Okay.
Come on. But the one I like the most that I get those stories from is in print news. But I'm
In
not sure if
print
it's
news.
yeah, I'm not sure if it's .org or .gov or in print.
How did you find these websites?
A lot of research when I started doing these shows and having to do stuff with Miss G and trying to find stuff to talk about. I started doing research and I started typing them into Google and they're popping up. And then I'd sign up for the newsletters for like all this stuff. And I also find classes that I can take that teach me about child welfare and different things for free that are for like attorneys and judges and stuff like that. But I took the classes and I was able to take them and I get certificates for them when I take them also. So,
Oh, that's great.
mhm.
So imprintnews dot.
Imprintnews.org.
Okay. So I just posted that in the comments for everyone. And maybe the next time that we meet and discuss these subjects, you can get that other website and post
I
it.
think we posted the other website. It's the same one that I got all the statues for
Oh, okay.
each state.
Okay.
It's that same website. And I
Okay.
signed up for the newsletter and I get it in my email.
Cool. So Melanie says, cool. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of the show today. I want to thank you for joining me, Ms. Cassandra. I appreciate it. And
Mhm.
folks, we'll be on tomorrow night, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. If come with your questions, if you have questions, post them into the um, whatever social media site you're watching us on. I think we're on 8 different sites. Post your questions. I get to see all the questions. Do you get to see the questions too, Cassandra?
I could see the questions. I just can't choose a question. I see them
Okay.
all though. When you
Okay.
highlight them, I see them. When you put them up,
Okay.
I see them. Yeah.
Well, if we see them, and we'll try to answer your questions, as well as we'll be, let's be listening to the story of some of our special guests that come on and want to share with everyone and the world about their CPS nightmares. All right. Well, everyone have a good rest of the day, a good Sunday, and we'll see you tomorrow, Monday at 7 p.m. Bye bye, everyone.